It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Chaos in South Korea. The president agrees to lift his martial law order after protests erupt in Seoul.
I have accepted the decision made by the National Assembly to dissolve and lift the martial law.
Soldiers entered the Parliament building earlier today with questions tonight over what is next for South Korea's leader. Also this evening, the Queen recovers from pneumonia, bowing out of earlier royal events, but joins the family for a banquet welcoming Qatar. The BBC pulls the MasterChef Christmas specials as new allegations against Greg Wallace's behaviour emerge. The NATO chief says Putin is not interested in peace after Ukraine's president suggests to Sky News that he might consider a ceasefire deal. And we have a special report on one of Britain's longest-running unsolved cases, the inside story of the doorstep murder. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello, good evening. South Korea has a reputation for being a democratic state with a strong economy and a vibrant society, an ally of the West. But tonight, South Korea has been thrown into turmoil. The president, Yoon Suk Yeol, declared emergency martial law, accusing the opposition in parliament of sympathising with its authoritarian neighbour. But now the president and the cabinet have agreed to lift the martial law tonight. So let's take a look at today's events then. The South Korean president declared martial law in a televised speech today, vowing to eliminate pro-North Korean anti-state forces. Martial law would mean any political activity is prohibited. Any act that seeks to overthrow the liberal democratic system, including the spread of fake news, would also not be allowed, and the media subject to the control of law. It would also mean that striking would be forbidden. Doctors who are currently absent must return to work. But just a few hours after it was announced, police officers were seen blocking the entrance of the National Assembly and clashing with protesters. Around the same time, South Korea's main opposition called on MPs to gather in Parliament despite the entrance being blocked. They then voted to lift martial law. Well, tonight, the president eventually agreed to, after the Defence Ministry said it would remain in place until he orders otherwise. Our Asia correspondent, Nicole Johnston, has this report.
A night of chaos in South Korea. Political turmoil triggered by a declaration of martial law. Finally called off by the embattled president, Yoon Suk Yeol.
I have accepted the decision made by the National Assembly to dissolve and lift the martial law.
These were the scenes in the capital Seoul just hours before. Troops on the street. Helicopters above. Crisis and confusion. After weeks of political impasse and claims of corruption, this country, a beacon of democracy and stability, placed under martial law.
I hereby declare an emergency martial law in order to defend the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korean communist forces.
The opposition, outraged, called on the public to rally. Even members of the president's own party said he had gone too far. Crowds gathered outside the parliament. Then lawmakers entered the building. The opposition leader live-streamed himself climbing over barriers to get inside. The parliament voted down the martial law and declared it illegal, ordering the troops to stand down.
To the soldiers of the Republic of Korea, from now on, the president's order following the illegal declaration of martial law is clearly illegal and unconstitutional. Following the unconstitutional, invalid and illegal presidential order is itself an unlawful act.
President Yoon has been under pressure for months. He lost an election this year, was forced to form a minority government, and his popularity has plummeted.
His argument was that opposition party is in cahoots with North is threatening the South Korean security, which is just ridiculous. I think very few South Koreans will agree with that.
The declaration has backfired on Yoon. South Korea's democracy appears challenged but intact. Yoon's political career may not survive it. Nicole Johnston, Sky News.
Well, let's bring in our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn. A shocking few hours for this democratic nation, Dominic. Where does this leave us now?
Yeah, a tumultuous night where a president, a lame duck president, in what seems to have been a sort of last-ditch, desperate last roll of the dice, plays the martial law card. And it seems he had more support than we initially thought, and there was more sort of military activity, it looks like, at the Parliament. And allegedly, his National Defence Minister was in league with him as well. But this move seems to have backfired completely because the people in the Parliament were having none of it. They rose up, they protected the Parliament, and then the MPs voted down what he had done, and he was obliged in the end to follow their lead. I think what it means for him, obviously, is he's now going to be at the mercy of his political rivals who have control of the majority in the Parliament. That's part of the reasons he did this, we think, and he is in a world of political pain. And if his rivals overreach, that could, I think, possibly raise the possibility of instability in South Korea. So they have to tread carefully as well. What it means for his country and his people and South Korea's allies, I think there will be those who will say this was very nerve-wracking. It's left nerves jangled. It's raised concerns about the stability of a country that has been a beacon of stability and democracy in the region for decades. And I think, there will be people concerned about the lingering repercussions. But I think ultimately you have to say that the system prevailed and rose to the challenge and did prevail against this threat. The Parliament did what it was expected to do. The Constitution was adhered to and seems to have served well. And this was a show of people power that effectively neutralised what was potentially a very serious threat to South Korea's stability and to its constitution. So I think ultimately, South Koreans can say their democracy has been strengthened by this, and that will reassure allies who, for a number of hours, were deeply concerned about what was happening in South Korea.
Yes, Dominic, keeping a close eye on the situation there for us. Thank you. Now, the royal family are hosting the Emir of Qatar tonight at a banquet, with the King paying tribute to the historic ties between the two nations. The Queen was among those attending, having missed the beginning of the state visit, as she revealed today that she'd been recovering from pneumonia. But critics say the visit should not have taken place because of the country's human rights record. Sky's royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills has more.
The Emir and his wife arrived on Horse Guards Parade. A smile between friends, showing just how pleased the King was to see him. But as the Prince and Princess of Wales stepped in, you could tell that someone was missing. The Queen, instead, was back at Buckingham Palace after doctors had advised her to avoid standing in the cold. And now we know why. Camilla revealed to some of the guests that her chest infection had actually been a form of pneumonia. It meant she was okay to attend parts of the visit, like this exhibition, but is still feeling low on energy with post-viral fatigue. A rare appearance by the Princess of Wales joining her husband to collect the visitors was also a reminder of the health worries they continue to face. William seeming particularly affectionate towards her, regularly offering a hand of reassurance. His father, of course, is still receiving cancer treatment. In what's been a difficult year for various members of the royal family health-wise, this has again reinforced how much they realise how important it is they step up when it comes to supporting the UK's diplomatic efforts. And you don't get a more significant gesture than a state visit. A money can't buy experience that only the UK can offer, one that some human rights groups don't believe the Qataris deserve. But as the Queen made the effort to join the King for the state banquet, the welcome for their visitors could not have been any warmer. The King praising Qatar's recent diplomatic efforts, including negotiating the release of hostages from Gaza.
I would particularly like to express the United Kingdom's deepest gratitude for your tireless mediation efforts over the past year in pursuit of peace in the face of unbearable heartache and suffering.
Listening around the table, guests from business, politics and sport. David Beckham and wife Victoria sat elsewhere, invited for their first state banquet. Prince William had also spent private time with the Emir. It seems every part of the family making extra efforts to future-proof this relationship. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News at Buckingham Palace.
The BBC has decided to pull its MasterChef Christmas specials following claims of inappropriate behaviour against Greg Wallace. New allegations have also emerged today, and now Sky News has seen evidence of claims that the presenter offended female staff on another show. Sky's arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer has more.
We're in York.
The BBC's knowledge of how Greg Wallace behaved on MasterChef might be making headlines, but Sky News has seen evidence that well over a year ago the corporation was alerted to problems with his behaviour on this show.
Good choice. Yeah. There.
Before he quit presenting inside the factory, there had been reports he'd offended female staff with inappropriate banter at the Nestlé factory in York. He later claimed he left to spend more time with his son, but this letter obtained by Sky News sent in February 2023 to Nestlé employees, confirming we have written to the production company and spoken to the BBC to bring our unacceptable experience to their attention in the hope that it is not repeated in other workplaces around the UK. Claims also now being made by BBC News that Wallace pressed his crotch against a woman during the filming of another BBC show in 2015, Eat Well for Less. It comes as lawyers hired by the makers of MasterChef are examining allegations about his conduct made by 13 people over a 17-year period, including Newsnight journalist Kirsty Walk, with some high-profile men speaking out.
I think if by now people who work in television, men who work in television, don't understand that light banter is no longer something that can be aired. Is there a sort of victim or a stereotype at the root of this banter who might be hurt? And it's just good manners, really. It's not about wokeness. It's just about being sensitive to the atmosphere.
Taking some time out after apologising for posting a video, initially claiming it was only a small number of middle-class women of a certain age who turned against him. Via his lawyers, he said it's entirely false to say that he engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature. The BBC has now pulled Wallace's Christmas special from its festive viewing schedule. Wallace can still be seen on BBC One this week for the semi-finals of MasterChef The Professionals. The BBC citing how life-changing the series can be for the chefs taking part as the reason it's still on air. But now, after coming under sustained pressure, it has somewhat belatedly taken the decision not to broadcast its two Christmas specials, given the current circumstances, as they put it. Opting for a gap in its Christmas TV programming rather than risk fanning the flames anymore. The BBC insists it takes any issues raised seriously and is clear that behaviour which falls below its standards will not be tolerated, which begs the question how multiple claims from multiple programmes are now emerging. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, let's take you to live pictures now from the Georgian capital, Tbilisi. Yet another night of violence on the streets of the capital there, protesting against election results. Let's show you some of these images. They are flashing, just to warn you. It looks like lasers are being shown there. We understand fireworks have also been thrown again, as they have other nights, burning, as you can see on the streets, people wearing their own protective gas masks as well. Georgia has been in turmoil since last Thursday, when Georgian Dream announced that it was halting talks with the European Union, renouncing any funding from the bloc until 2028. This is a real battle of the direction of Georgia, whether it looks to Russia or it looks to the European Union. Georgia, of course, one of the former Soviet Union's most pro-Western successor states, critics accusing the government of abandoning that course now and steering it closer towards Russia. And even though the ruling party has suggested that it does not lean to Russia, the protests continue, as you can see, with once again violence on the streets. It comes as protesters suggest that those who have been caught by the authorities have had serious damage. The political ombudsman complaining about damage to people's eyes and faces. This is the public ombudsman accusing police of inflicting torture on people arrested during these 6 days of big street protests against the government's decision to suspend talks on joining the European Union. Keep an eye on those pictures, obviously, from Tbilisi throughout the evening. Well, to the United States now, where lawyers representing President-elect Donald Trump have asked a New York judge to dismiss the hush money case against him. Our US correspondent Mark Stone has been following that case and set aside the conviction, Mark, all 34 guilty counts from memory.
Yeah, another case bites the dust for Donald Trump. This is not unexpected, but what is interesting is the language that the lawyers representing Donald Trump have used in this court filing, where they're asking Alvin Bragg up in New York and the judge involved in the case as well to ditch it completely. Because of what Joe Biden did late last week. Joe Biden, of course, pardoned his own son for a criminal wrongdoing for convictions that he faces. And in the court filing today, lawyers for Donald Trump say President Trump argued that raw politics has infected that process and led to a miscarriage of justice. And it goes on to say these comments amounted to an extraordinary condemnation of President Biden's own Department of Justice. Effectively, the lawyers for Donald Trump are saying, look, Joe Biden has undermined his own Department of Justice by saying it did not act properly in dealing with his own son. And so how can anything against our client, Donald Trump, stand up in a court of law? The case should be dismissed. So, as I say, not unexpected. We will see where it goes from there. Remember, too, the immunity case against Donald Trump as well as president, immune from prosecution. So one by one, these court cases are simply evaporating.
Mark, with that update, thank you. Now, last week, the Ukrainian president told Sky News that he could support a deal that saw Ukrainian territory that he controls taken under the NATO umbrella, even if land occupied by Russia isn't returned immediately. Around a fifth of Ukrainian territory remains under Russian control, including Crimea and parts of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. There was a fresh Russian drone attack on critical infrastructure in the cities of Ternopil and Rivne overnight. The attack on Ternopil left large parts of the city without electricity. Sky's Europe correspondent Adam Parsons reports now from Brussels.
As winter approaches, so the war in Ukraine becomes ever more bleak. Russian drones attacking energy infrastructure. There were blackouts in the city of Ternopil. NATO's new leader, until recently the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, was unabashed in his support and in his anger.
Ukraine is entering another crucial winter, and Russia's aggression shows no sign of abating. Just the opposite. Putin is ramping up his rhetoric and reckless actions. Putin is not interested in peace.
His job is to unite leaders. The Americans are here, but theirs is a regime on the way out. And the lingering question is what will happen when President Trump is back in charge.
Like it or not, you've got me and you've got us till the 20th of January, every minute, every day.
Ukraine is desperate for NATO membership as a bulwark against Russian aggression, as the country's president told Sky News last week.
If we want to stop the hot stage of the war, we should take under NATO umbrella the territory of Ukraine that we have under our control. And then Ukraine can get back the other part of its territory diplomatically.
Talks are underway, but NATO insists they go step by step. I wonder if you could outline what is the offer that has been made to Ukraine, and in your mind, is it sensible to say that those areas that have been occupied by Russia will invariably end up remaining in Russian hands?
I would argue, let's not have all these discussions step by step on what a peace process might look like. Make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to get to a position of strength when those peace talks start, when the Ukrainian government has decided they are ready to do so. So I would say more military aid and less discussions on what a peace process could look like.
NATO is often the forum for bold, confident public statements, but behind the scenes, the messages I'm hearing are much more nuanced. Firstly, that Ukraine's application for membership can't be simply rushed through or rubber-stamped. And secondly, that a peace deal will inevitably involve Ukrainian territory being ceded to Russia, however painful that will be. The fighting rumbles on. It is cold and remorseless, and Russia is slowly making ground. Ukraine is a nation fearful that time is running out. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Brussels.
The boss of Ford UK has told Sky News that the government must provide more consumer incentives to boost demand for electric vehicles and help the industry hit challenging climate targets. Both Ford and Jaguar launched a new generation of EVs today, hoping to appeal to a new generation of drivers. Sky's business correspondent Paul Kelsey reports.
So you want to launch a car? Well, you can do it the traditional way, with a silk sheet in a factory, or like this, with a concept, 2 colours and not much else.
Don't be held back by the past. Be brave, be fearless, copy nothing.
But whether it's Jaguar in Miami or Ford on Merseyside, British car manufacturers face the same question: how to go electric and bring customers with them. Ford hope the Puma at £30,000, their cheapest EV yet, will help. But the boss told me government targets will be missed without support for customers.
So the number one thing we want is direct customer incentives. So similar to maybe a scrappery scheme, we've been asking for a cut in VAT on electric vehicles, but something that will incentivise customers to buy electric vehicles, both vans and cars, is what we desperately need in the UK at the moment.
Well, how much do you think it'll take? Is it £2,000, £3,000, £5,000 as some kind of subsidy for consumers?
That's a good question. It's definitely in that kind of region, and it's got to be substantial.
The electric power units produced here will also drive Ford's electric transit, helping white vans go green. But with the entire industry missing targets for vans and cars, they're banking on government to make life easier.
Producing these new electric power units has given this factory a future, but Ford remains under pressure, like other established car manufacturers, to bring down the cost of its new electric models to deal with falling consumer demand and increased competition, particularly from China.
The message from one of Britain's most recognisable motoring faces: don't panic.
We need cars to move about and do things and live our lives. That's what they're for. That's why we love them. They move us physically, thereby they move us emotionally. So they'll always be there. And science and engineering will ensure a way of them being there without us inadvertently destroying the planet we drive them around on.
For Jaguar, the immediate challenge is a backlash over a rebrand and a concept at least a year from becoming a car.
We wanted to be bold. We wanted to be disruptive. We wanted to be in the conversation. We absolutely don't want to alienate any of our loyal fans. Quite the opposite. We want to take as many of our current fans with us on that journey.
Most would settle for affordable cars you can actually buy. Without help, EVs will remain out of reach for many. Paul Kelso, Sky News in Halewood.
It is a case which has baffled even the most seasoned detectives. The brutal killing of a banker on his doorstep in the sleepy Highland town of Nairn 20 years ago, remaining one of Britain's longest-running unsolved murders. Now, Alistair Wilson's son is calling on Scotland's top police officer to resign. Sky's Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis has more.
You make the fire police for ambulance. Oh, the husband's been shot. You're at the Kevin Road now. Listen to me, I can't hear you. You're at the fire police for ambulance. Oh my God! 10 Kevin Road. Who do you want to speak to? The fire police or ambulance? Police or ambulance. The husband's just been shot.
The oldest boy knows that his dad was shot. Somebody shot him with a gun. All these things he didn't understand, and I've had to explain to him. And now it's just, well, why? Why did he shoot my daddy?
And now, 20 years on, that boy, now this young man, still has the same question after these eyes witnessed his father's last moments.
All I saw was my dad on the floor in a pool of his own blood, and my mum over him. I still get the image of my dad himself in nightmares and stuff from time to time.
And how do you explain this to a child, to anyone? The beaming smiles of father and son hours before a cold-blooded killing in this small seaside Highland town.
I blanked out a lot of my childhood memories from the council and stuff. That was my way of dealing with it all, was just kind of closing the door on that kind of part of my life.
Bank manager Alistair Wilson was reading a bedtime story to his sons when his wife answered the door to a stranger calling her husband by name. A blue envelope with the name Paul was handed over. Then he was shot dead, executed in cold blood, the gunman vanishing into the night.
It was difficult when people would say that it was my mum. That was the thing that's what I got in trouble for in school, or if it was ever for fighting or anything like that, was because someone would come up and say it was my mum, and that would be me. I've already lost a parent, and then my other one's getting made out to be something that I know they're not. Yeah, that was my biggest struggle.
With rumour rife over the years here in Nairn, detectives really looked at Alistair Wilson's background, his job at the bank, and theories about a possible hitman. It wasn't until later years, though, they examined a possible motive involving his objection to a beer garden here at the pub across the road. But could that grievance really trigger such violence? The former owner of this place is a witness in a protracted investigation that's lost the confidence of the Wilsons.
It was only 18 months, 2 years ago, we were told by the police that someone was going to be arrested on a certain day, and then no one contacted us. We had to go chasing, we had to phone the police and ask what was going on, and we were told that the arrest didn't happen. To this day, we still don't know why the arrest didn't happen. No one has told us. That's all we wanted to know. That's why we were asking to meet the chief, and she still refuses to meet us.
Do you think the Police Scotland Chief Constable should resign over this?
There's no other option. I felt that if she can't get a grasp of what's going on, then how can she lead?
And a grasp of it is what she is attempting to do. Inside here is where officers are now fully reinvestigating the doorstep murder. Chief Constable, the family of Alistair Wilson are calling for you to resign. They say you failed to get a grip on this case. What do you say?
Well, I won't be resigning, and I'm committed to us getting answers and finding the people responsible for the murder.
They say your force is incapable of doing that. What do you say to that? This is a case with controversy, some clues, but no closure, in what has now become a fight to get the truth.
Visit his grave, would try and toast him on his birthday and try to do nice things around his birthday. He would have been 50 this year. We all got together, full family, and had a kind of marked it that way, but there's only so much that you can do.
Conor Gillis, Sky News, Nairn.
Nigel Farage's Reform UK won more than 4 million votes at the general election, with most of its support coming from older white men. But it appears to be winning with some younger voters too. It's one of Britain's most popular political parties on TikTok and is pulling a growing number of young white men to the right of politics. Sky's political correspondent Serena Barker-Singh has this report.
Reform UK had the most online engagement of any party this election.
TikTok was the place where I saw them, that's where they sort of made the name for themselves, especially Nigel.
And who was watching? Well, mostly young men.
Young blokes want to be young blokes, and they feel the world is telling them not to be young blokes. Something remarkable is happening with Gen Z.
Data from the general election shows a growing gulf between how young men and women are voting. The so-called bro vote is on the rise, with young men twice as likely to have voted Reform in the election than young women. And for 16 to 17-year-olds, 35% of young men said they would have voted Reform, making Farage's party as popular with this demographic as Labour.
Hey guys, look again. The conference hasn't...
Nick became a political influencer after his first TikTok supporting Reform went viral overnight. It is young people, but it's also young boys, young men.
Yes.
What do you think it is about Reform that attracts that demographic?
I think with the onset of fourth-wave feminism and all of that, I for one believe that young men are feeling increasingly disenfranchised by society.
Hello, my name is George Finch. I'm 18 years old.
George Finch started a Reform-focused magazine online. He says it's by reformers for reformers.
All of us have got that one common goal, and it's to get Reform to win.
You want as many voters to vote for you as possible?
Yeah.
So if you see it skewed so heavily in one way, surely you want to make sure as many people are voting?
Sure if you see this as a significant issue for Reform, I'm sure HQ are solving this.
This is Charlie. He spent the summer campaigning for Reform UK on a battle bus with Nigel Farage.
We stand here united!
But 3 months later, now at just 13 years old, he's moved further to the right, attending and speaking at Tommy Robinson rallies.
I've got an opinion on immigration and stuff like that. Obviously, you stop the votes and all that kind of stuff.
Do you think from the summer to now you've spent more time online?
Yes, and I believe me being online has helped me actually develop my views. Because if I, say for example, if I were to just watch a normal TV, I would say, oh, what a racist person he is, what a racist person they are. But no, now I'm on Twitter, I see it all firsthand.
And increasing numbers do seem to be listening. An anti-establishment rhetoric now filling a political gap that mainstream politics won't. Serena Bug-Singh, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and the New Statesman's Associate Political Editor, Rachel Cunliffe. Welcome to both of you. Among the stories we'll be discussing then, this on the front page of the Financial Times. Its headline, South Korean President backs down after Parliament rejects martial law. That to come in just a moment.